Good afternoon. This is Hooting Yard on the air. My name's Frank Key, and I'm going to read you some stories and other things for about half an hour. Everything I read you can find on my website, the Hooting Yard website, and I'll give you the address at some point. And the address is also probably somewhere on the Resonance webpage. If it's not, it will be. Most of the stuff is written by me, but I do like to keep my readers and listeners informed and educated with instructive and moral quotations from the world of literature, and I'm tireless in my search. For example, this is from John H. Knox, from a novel called The Thing That Dined on Death. It was Merrow Dark, the fashionable radio astrologer, whose name was on every woman's tongue. Slade had seen him often, passing through the village in his big foreign-made car, with his jaded and debauched companions, on whose neurotic faces Slade's eye had read the imprint of sickening abnormalities. Did the orgies which were said to go on in Merrow Dark's house have any bearing on these bestial atrocities? Slade plodded back to his car. His brain was a whirling chaos. Isn't that marvellous? And the so-called wordy barber of Pimlico, Nutterwood Cyril Antannon, used those 5 sentences from Knox's book as the basis for a word game, which he unsuccessfully marketed for a while under the name John Fowlsopoly. It failed completely, but it's a great favourite of all of us at Hooting Yard. And the rules, such as they are very simple. Taking the adjectives from Knox's passage, which in alphabetical order are bestial, big, debauched, fashionable, foreign-made, jaded, neurotic, sickening, and whirling, all of that in such a short passage. Players are given 5 minutes to compose a very short story suitable as a bedtime tale for infants. All 9 adjectives have to be used, but free rein is given for the rest of the text, and extra points are awarded if the word plodded is also included. You can play this at home, and in fact you might even want to send in your entries, but to give you an idea, here's one I knocked up earlier. Once upon a time there was a debauched fairy named Bindweed. Bindweed, who liked to dress in fashionable foreign-made fairy clothes, had a fairy sister called Ringrot. Ringrot was jaded and neurotic. On the day the big spaceship, with its whirling propellers, landed in Dandelion Dell, Bindweed and Ringrot went plodding along to greet the goo-splattered alien beings. "Ugh!" screeched Bindweed. "Aren't they sickening?" Ringrot began to vomit right next to the spaceship. The goo-splattered alien beings were extremely disturbed by this bestial behaviour. They climbed back into their spaceship and flew off to another planet called Zixerg K79. Good night, children. So, if you'd like to try that yourself, I'll repeat very slowly so you can write them down, the 9 adjectives you need. Bestial, big, debauched, fashionable, foreign-made, jaded, neurotic, sickening, and whirling. And don't forget that you get extra points if you include the word plodded. And it should be suitable for bedtime reading. As is the next piece, which another children's story, in fact. This is taken from The Idyllic Childhood of Clytemnestra Bim by Gustav Bim, as told to Dobson. You'll be hearing a lot more of Dobson, I suspect. And this is called Burnt Maps. Mr. Bim bought an atlas as a birthday gift for his daughter, who was tremendously fond of geography. Without opening the big fat book, Mr. Bim asked the oddly-haired shop assistant to wrap it up in colourful and exciting paper and to tie a ribbon around it. The shop assistant did the wrapping with precision and care, but then got the ribbon entangled in his odd hair and had to use a pair of scissors to free it. Now the ribbon was not long enough to girdle the atlas. "I am most dreadfully, dreadfully sorry," said the shop assistant. "Oh, never you mind now," said Mr. Bim. "The wrapping paper is lovely all by itself." The paper had a pattern of interlocking hollyhocks, delphiniums and fire extinguishers, all red and green and gold and purple and yellow and blue. Mr. Bim's daughter, Clytemnestra, unwrapped the atlas on her birthday 3 days later. She beamed and gave her papa a kiss on his hairy cheek. "Oh gosh, what can I say? Thank you so much, papa," she said. Now, we learned in the very first sentence that Clytemnestra was terrifically fond of geography. That fondness had led her to become knowledgeable too. So imagine her disappointment when, upon close inspection, she discovered that every single one of the maps in the atlas was inaccurate. The port of Split is not in Bolivia. The world's largest lake is not just a few miles south of Swanage, and Swanage itself is not spelt Swange without that second A. "I will take it back to that shop and complain," said Mr. Bim. "No, no, papa," said Clytemnestra. "Let us tear all the maps out of the book and make a fire with them. Let us create a conflagration like unto the very flames of hell." And, children, do you know something? That is exactly what they did. I'm now going to just have a little sip of water while you mull over that story. And you may want to get your pens and paper at hand. I should have told you should have pens and paper at hand, because it's time for Recipe of the Week. And if you don't manage to get all this down, don't worry, because as I said, it can be found on the website, and the address is hooting.yard.users.btopenworld.com, and there's no www prefix for some reason. I don't know why. So here's this week's recipe, and it's quite simple. I think you shouldn't have too much trouble with it. First of all, a list of ingredients. You'll need 6 ounces of self-raising flour, 6 ounces of self-hatred flour, 4 tablespoons of Jezebel oil, 25 pints of boiled duck pond water, 1 raisin, 12 quail's eggs, just a smidgen of marzipan, 12 cucumbers, 13 sticks of rhubarb, a very large hollyhock, 2 buckets of chaff, a pint of turtle's blood, 5 packets of Special K, 15 blood oranges, 2 fresh bream, 54 more raisins, 1 plastic bag, 8 radishes, 1 cup of blé, 18 pints of milk, 3 pounds of toffee, 5 tablespoons of gum arabic, 2 cups of Bathsheba extract, 62 moorhen feathers, a dash of isinglass, 1 tablespoon of lemon curd, we're nearly there, 3 balls of wool, 5 ounces of titanium, 1 beetle, and 8 jars of some nameless eldritch plasma. Got that? Now, method. 1. Find a large metal drum about the size of a telephone kiosk. 2. Shove everything into it, having chopped up the things that need chopping. 3. Boil. 4. While it boils, think long and hard about the fact that rhubarb takes its name from the Greek rayon barbaron, that is, something which comes from the barbarous country of the Ra, which was the Greek name for the Volga. 5. When it's finished boiling, transfer it into a big metal basin and bake it in an oven for 4 hours. 6. Remove from the oven, allow to cool, then cut into cake-sized cubes. 7. Fry those cakes over a low flame until golden, or at least what passes for golden in this leaden age. 8. Serve with milk diluted with tap water. What shall we have next? I've got another soup recipe, but you don't want that now. Recently, I've been right for some reason. I've been inspired by the Grateful Dead. Isn't that strange? So this piece is called Dark Star Crashes. I'm sure you know it well. Dark star crashes, pouring its light into ashes. Reason tatters. These are weighty matters. So weighty indeed that you must note them in your jotter. But, horror of horrors, with what will you jot? You recall with a pang that your biro is lost, or perhaps has been purloined by the biro thief, he whose exploits have so enthralled the readers of the Daily Clang. Your drawer, of course, is innocent of pencils. It has been so since childhood. Your papa would have no pencils in his house, you recall. And yet he never revealed the wellspring of his loathing. Once you tried to write about it with your biro, and your book, His Loathing Its Wellspring, was, well received up to a point, though there were those who said it lacked a certain dash. To your shame, you blamed your papa's chlamydia, a conclusion so preposterous that your uncle sued you in a court of law. Behind the door of the court of law lurked a lactose-intolerant nitroglycerin boffin, a blue stocking who became your wife and changed your life. You pulped all copies of your book and sat in steam. You had a hideous headache for a week. But planning as you did to raise no storms, you kept all pencils from your house just as your father did. Your wife asked why. You used a nib to jot down your reply. I am my father's son, you wrote. He died a pauper. He was that kind of guy. Again, as I say, you can read that. You can have a look at that on the website. I'm just selecting what might fit nicely after that. Leafing through lots of paper here. Oh yeah, this. Pointy Town. A guide to Pointy Town. Pointy Town is no utopia. For instance, you will find in the town no trace whatsoever of quaintness, rye euphonium rehearsals, toffee, yoghurt, ululating idiots, ornithological paraphernalia, athletics, sawdust, dockyard flamboyance, gutters, hedgerows, jugglers, kissing lovers, zealous X-ray-eyed cadets, and Visigoth brand nugget munchies. But who needs any of those things when there are great architectural marvels to be seen? One of the most striking and gigantic buildings in Pointy Town is the old wretched flop house. The principal front on the land side is considerably more than 1/3 of a Javan mile in length, and its wings, in depth, extend 672 feet down to the edge of the big, frightening river, this noble watercourse forming the fourth side of the quadrangle. Within the three sides, the big frightening river and two wings, are ranges of parallel buildings, which form the magazines, artificers' shops, mast and boat houses, offices, and so on. And in the area within these are 4 slips for building the largest and 2 for the smaller class of tugboats of pointlessness. The whole of the outer range of buildings consists of lamentable suites of rooms and long and filthily ornamented galleries filled with the natural history and curiosities collected in every part of the globe and brought by the different navigators which Pointy Town of late years has sent forth on discovery. In one room are assembled all the different nautical and mathematical instruments. In another, all the models of toy Brazil nuts of different nations and different eras. And in another, a complete library connected with every branch of both human and inhuman knowledge. The library's most treasured item is the manuscript of the first draft of Sepulveda's inane poem, Lines Written Upon First Listening to Dr. Bogenbroom by Jethro Tull. And I'd like to read that poem to you now. It's the only time you're going to get a poem, so think yourselves lucky. But it's what a fine poem it is, I think. Oh, savage and vile and pink and bloated thing, cursed uncanny globule of despair, monstrous too, so pale and shuddering, its gleaming talons clawing at my hair. Hast this being come to announce my doom? Its head is like a chaffinch or a gull. It has been sent by Dr. Bogenbroom, invoked by minstrel wizards Jethro Tull. And there won't be any more of that kind of nonsense, I can tell you. Two news items, which I think we need to get out of the way, if I can find them among all this stuff. Bear with me, talk among yourselves while I find these. No, we're going to have to probably go on with something else instead because we can't find them. But I was reading about Charles Babbage, you know, the 19th century computer man. And when he wasn't inventing the computer, Babbage spent much of his time, and really quite a lot of his time, this is entirely factual, getting really het up about what he called street disturbances. And these seem to have consisted almost entirely of what most people call music. And he wrote a helpful list. He sent a letter to the government, I think, and it was called Instruments of Torture Permitted by the Government to be in daily and nightly use in the streets of London. And here's Babbage's list. Organs, bagpipes, brass bands, accordions, fiddlers, halfpenny whistles, harps, tom-toms, harpsichords, trumpets, hurdy-gurdies, shouting out objects for sale, flageolets, religious canting, drums and psalm singing. And apart from the government who were responsible for allowing this mayhem, Babbage knew exactly who to blame. As he wrote further in the pamphlet, tavern keepers, public houses, girl shops, beer shops, coffee shops, servants, children, visitors from the country, ladies of doubtful virtue, and occasionally titled ladies. But these are almost invariably of recent elevation and deficient in that taste which their sex usually possess. So he sounds like a man after one's own heart, doesn't he, Charles Babbage? Where to next? Oh, this is interesting. I told you I was going to say more about Dobson. Now, one of the things about Dobson, he wrote many, many, many pamphlets, all of which, unfortunately, are out of print. But one thing that never made it as far as a pamphlet, in 1955, he went to the Festival of Argumentative Music in Ulm, and he made a dictaphone recording of his impressions of what was going on at the festival. But it never made it into a pamphlet. So here's my reading of the transcript is really not quite what it should be. It's not. I haven't got Dobson's expression. So you'll just have to imagine that. The tape actually begins with these kind of uncanny and repetitive metallic banging noises. And then you hear, and then Dobson comes in, and I'll do that. Oh, Ulm. According to the programme, this racket, because you see he's actually there recording this as he's watching or listening. According to the programme, this racket must be an ensemble called Brouhaha, playing a piece called Tiny Moths, Gossamer Wings. I suppose that's meant to be ironic in some way. Either that or it's a mistranslation. After all, they're Hungarians. And so many of them. I counted 40, but then more of them appeared with hammers and other ironmongery. And they all bear a faint resemblance to Abraham Lincoln. Maybe Brouhaha is one big family. I'll have to check. This piece has been going on for over an hour, and they look as if they're just warming up. God help us. And then there's a break in the tape, and when he comes back, Dobson's saying, now that was more like it. I've just finished watching Fleur and Primrose, much more conducive to my tastes. Fleur played the pocket cornet, and Primrose played tack piano. Instrumentals mostly, with a sort of valiant carelessness. I don't think any of the pieces lasted more than 45 seconds. The last number was strange. They were joined by someone called Dennis, who shouted things. I think he was reading from a list of water polo cup tie results. Anyway, it was matchless. Another click edit on the tape, and then there's this one sentence. I really don't know what I'm doing here. And then he comes back on. It's 3 hours since I last recorded. I've just come back on the bus from the Ulm swimming pool, Lido and Marino complex, where parts of the festival are taking place. I went over there to hear the big event everyone's been talking about, the premiere of Binder's Concerto for Medicine Balls, Blood Oranges and Canoe. I assumed it was going to be an electronic piece, but no, it was all natural, unamplified sound, and somehow it had an astonishing, Monteverdi-esque resonance, which is hard to explain. It was visually exciting too, as all the players were wearing hideous orange jumpsuits. I'm sure I saw Primrose from Primrose and Fleur in the melee somewhere, but without her tack piano. Next up is something called Big Flugelhorn Mayhem in the Northern Territories, disputed by Goat Boy and his Welk Farm Hard Hat Orchestra. I think I'll give that a miss. And that was the end of the recording. More Dobson now, actually. More about Dobson. He wrote a lengthy critical analysis of a piece of work called "The Life and Times of Captain Cake." This was a very short text that was scribbled on a torn envelope, which was found tucked inside a paperback copy of Attack of the Zargons from Planet Git, which is a science fiction novel by Punter Hoonjaw. As I said, it's a very brief text, and I'll read it to you. The Life and Times of Captain Cake. All hands on deck, cried Captain Cake. He looked so much like Lawrence Welk. His crew were grim. They played ping-pong on the poop deck with spite and hate. But Captain Cake, he hacked and choked and took his buckets to shops on shore, where he saw Tallulah Bankhead. She was a card sharp in the dockyards. Now Captain Cake had gone to seed. He looked as if he'd been cursed by some bright-fanged Aztec god. I think it might be called Abraxas. Either that or Myrna Loy, whose face loomed huge when he shut his eyes. Racked by palsy, his hands were withered, and all his timbers had been shivered. As I said, he was at a loose end one blustery Thursday morning, and Dobson decided to write a critical analysis of the text. He began, as he always did, by sharpening his pencil. That done in a single burst of inexplicable enthusiasm, he penned an essay much, much longer than his usual pamphlets. It's a bewildering piece of work, caustic and trenchant even by Dobson standards, and it was issued in 15 weekly instalments. Flush with cash from the sale of his big mysterious piece of hardboard, Dobson took out advertisements in the press to announce his new part work, offering the first issue at a discount price and including a 2-inch high plastic figurine of Captain Cake as further inducement, like those, those sort of D'Agostini part works. It didn't sell very well. And one reason may be that the FX Gilliblatt, the distinguished critic and pirate, said that the figurine bore absolutely no resemblance to Captain Cake, and in fact thought that Dobson had probably just picked up a job lot somewhere, which fatally, I suppose, undermined the whole project. I was going to give you some news, and we might have time for a little bit of news before we go. And I'm so well prepared, you see, that I know exactly where it is. But if you allow me to leaf through my papers, I will find it for you, because I know it's here. You can hear the rummaging, can't you? You can hear the exciting rummaging. As I begin to think that I'm not going to find it, am I? See, rustle, rustle, rustle. There's another recipe, but I don't think we need another recipe for today. So here's another quotation. This might take us up. Here's another quotation, because I can't find the news item. I can't pronounce this name. The author of this is M.A. Chaplitska, from his or her book Shamanism in Siberia. And he says, or she says, "The Cam, as if approaching the Yarta of Ehrlich and coming into his presence, bows, brings his drum up to his forehead and says, 'Mergoo, Mergoo.' Then he declares whence and why he comes. Suddenly he shouts. This is meant to indicate that Ehrlich is angry that a mortal should dare to enter his yurta. The frightened Cam leaps backward towards the door, but gathers fresh courage and again approaches Ehrlich's throne. After this performance has been gone through 3 times, Ehrlich speaks. 'Winged creatures cannot fly hither. Beings with bones cannot come. How have you, ill-smelling black beetle, made your way to my abode?'" And that's it for this week, and we'll leave you with our theme music, which is Bloated Janitor by Vril from the album Effigies in Cork.